And we're on the air with Wire106, Season 3, Episode 5.
Episode 5. Season 3 is pretty compelling. This episode kind of struck me as a I don't know, as a kind of an episode of kind of almost un, unlike The Wire, and you might disagree with me. These were unlikely formulaic realizations, right? Like a lot of episodes in television are like someone gets an idea and then the realization happens and it all works itself out. And The Wire usually doesn't follow that formula. But this episode kind of does in a weird way, particularly with Colvin getting the idea that, hey, shit runs downhill at the Comstat meeting, and then the rest of the episode is him really kind of putting in place to take the middle managers and put them in control, or actually put the pressure on them to make sure all their hoppers go into Amsterdam. So it was an oddly formulaic episode. As much as I loved it, and I love season 3, it kind of struck me as this weird, very unwire, if that makes sense.
It's like normal TV, yeah.
Exactly.
I hadn't thought about that, but yeah. It's an interesting way of looking at it.
It doesn't happen that often. So when it happens, it's remarkable.
Yeah.
Interesting. But there's a lot of kind of, and I don't know how you agree with it, but I'm going to pull up the epigram here, or epigraph here, because I don't know if you have it, but I'll go find it if not.
I've got it.
You
Yeah.
got it. So if we pull up the epigraph, I think it speaks. This is McNulty's line when he comes face to face after just being done with kind of trailing around Stringer Bell, only to find out like he's legit as legit can be. With
Yeah.
B&B Enterprises, the car, and the whole night. And I guess B&B means Bell and Barksdale. Is that right?
Right. Yeah.
It's just awesome. And there's this notion here of the legitimacy of not only Stringer Bell and Avon Barksdale's operation, which this is a great episode for highlighting the friction between those two around that idea, or at least the beginning of it.
Yeah.
That means Barksdale and Bell. But also the legitimacy of drugs. So while Bell and Barksdale are going legitimate, the police department is legitimizing, drugs and effectively breaking the law. So it's just a fascinating kind of play on this. And McNulty and Stringer Bell crossing in the night in some ways really gets at that.
Yeah. I found that Spanish translation interesting because they're using illusions instead of hopes. And, I don't know anything about Spanish really, but there's a difference in meaning there. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
It's just interesting because McNulty's world isn't playing out as he'd hoped. And this is a great episode for that, because even when he has that fling with the political analyst, or whatever
Right.
her name is, the campaign woman, she's like, okay, get out. I'm done with you. It's like awesome. Like, just not going his way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's an interesting episode for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But I was struck by a couple of things. Cuddy is obviously he's working out some stuff, right? So
Yeah.
there's that issue. But I was struck by when he goes to see the deacon in the church, and I don't know. I just wanted to know what church this was, because look at that. Like the pipe organ and then that unbelievably cool pulpit with that like unbelievable color behind it. I was really struck by that and wondering, like, because born and raised a Catholic, this is very much a different vision of a kind of crucifixion setting or piece behind the altar. So I was just struck by that visually right away.
Yeah. It's interesting because I pulled the exact same shot.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. that whole scene in the back. I was like trying to look at it to figure out what was going on in there. Because
Yeah.
the pictures sort of look like buildings, kind of, but I'm thinking they're just
Yeah.
stylized figures. But that would make it, a good metaphor for the city there. Yeah. Um, so the title of this episode was Straight and Narrow, and
Yeah.
part of that applies to Cuddy there. You know,
Absolutely.
um, it kind of ties to like Bubbles is sort of trying to move in that direction.
That's right. He's giving the money to Kima on a layaway.
Yeah, yeah, and Avon gets out and there's a meeting with the lawyer and they're sort of like looking at that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There was another shot that I picked up um, because Carcetti is pushing this issue.
It's true. Absolutely. You're right.
Yeah, and it's just a scene of him sitting in his office and talking with Gray, I think is his friend's name there.
Yeah, the other
Um,
councilman.
yeah, but like he hasn't announced that he's trying to run for mayor, except I think just to a few friends in the last episode. But you see that elect Carcetti is like all plastered around the room there. It's like a visual cue, of something that's going on, even though it's not being set out in the open here.
Yeah, and it's visually kind of compelling in that it's happening, you get him, but even it's in the background of Gray, which you find out eventually is an issue, right? Like
Yeah,
Gray has it at his desk, it's behind him, and the fact that, a white guy is going to run for mayor in Baltimore isn't not an issue in and of itself, but then set up against Gray, who's going to be the one who's running, really creates a tension here that's interesting because he's surrounded by Carcetti signs but doesn't even see the writing on the wall.
yeah,
It's awesome. They're at his desk, they're in front of, they're behind his back, they're right here, and then Carcetti's looking right at him, and he can't see it, which I love.
yeah. And he's playing right into Carcetti's hands. I don't think at this point Carcetti's like strategized that out yet, but he needs the other guy to run.
Yeah.
You know,
Maybe we can swap images and see how many we have that are the same. 'Cause I think it's fun, kind of like ping pong of images. Here's my next one, which I think to me it's fascinating because I've spent a lot of time in rooms like this. You probably have too for conferences. You got the 3 tins of coffee behind there. You got that stand up. This is some run of the mill Hilton. Like you can see it. Like the interiors again are so brilliant in the show, and I just love that they're so familiar. And the fact that we have Robert's rules taken to the next level, where you've gotten all the major drug dealers in the community also going somewhat for straight and narrow. Like they don't want the violence. They just want to get the cheapest product, the best product they can from New York. Joe Prop is on, Stringer's on. Like there's a certain amount of like Godfather-like harmony here, right?
yeah. I like that royal purple,
Yeah,
table
absolutely.
top there.
What does it say on that kind of art board or that board that's on the back right near the coffee? Can you read what it says?
I can't read it, but it probably says something about the New Day Co-op. Um,
That's what it does say.
yeah,
So they even have official billboards that they've created.
yeah, yeah. Well, here, let's look at my screenshot here.
Okay. So we do. We're thinking along similar lines, aren't we? Let me turn mine off. Hold on.
All right, let's see. I mean, like, because this is the
I missed this
sign
shot.
outside, like it is out in the open. I mean, they're not saying, but
I don't know how I missed this shot altogether. This is brilliant.
yeah. Tomorrow's success stories start today.
And it's really like, and it plays off very much like, I mean, a couple of things happen. It plays off very much like The Godfather. Everyone's around, right? There's one family, obviously, or there's one player that's not gonna play along. This is
Mhm.
Marlowe, even when Stringer goes to visit him, and we see our buddy for the first time, who rides alongside with Snoop. I keep on
Yeah,
forgetting his name.
Chris.
Chris. So he's introduced for the first time. Awesome character. But we don't get any sense, like, Marlowe's not going to play the game. And, like, there's where, and it's interesting because he's not going to play the game because I think by his estimation and by Barksdale's estimation, that's not the game. So there's an interesting kind of, like, the corporatization of the drug trade is what we're looking at. Executive
Yeah.
New Day Co-op, success stories. I mean, this is very capitalist speak. And Barksdale and Marlowe, in some odd way, are the keepers of the faith.
Yeah.
If you can look at it in such a perverted way.
Well, yeah. I mean, it comes up, I think, towards the end of the season in the commentary. They're talking about Stringer and Colvin are trying to reform something and change the way the game is played, and that just couldn't be allowed to happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
What do you got?
The
Oh,
next
that was
ship.
yours. Let me
Yeah.
let me, let me throw it out
Okay.
there. So speaking of Marlowe, who we've uh, referred to a couple of times, and Marlowe's a character, and you have a sense that here he is. He's a street kid. He's going to play, and he's doing his math, and he's figuring out if he's going to fight Barksdale or not, and what's involved in that. And you get it. I think for me at this scene, it's a brilliantly created scene because you have Herc and uh, Carver coming into basically into Marlowe's area, right, like his kitchen, so to speak. And you got Kima up in a abandoned house taking pictures, and she really helps to kind of reinforce the tension here. That I don't think Herc and Carver, although Carver picks up on it, have any idea just how bad this could go for them because you know, Marlowe's not going to back down from the cops. And it's apparent in this moment that he's willing to go not only head to head, but potentially to have his people kill him. And there's a really kind of rough, talking about stepping a step beyond the game. There's also those limits that never works for anyone. We saw that in season 1. So Marlowe's a different kind of character. And I think this scene, when he's facing off with Herc and all the tension involved, really captures that beautifully.
Yeah. And Herc absolutely does not get it. Yeah.
At all. Yeah, he is not cut out to be a cop.
No. Yeah. Um, so the next shot I have here, let's bring this up. This is on the streets of Amsterdam. And this is where Colvin has rounded up all the dealers, like the mid-level people, and brought them here, and he's telling them, this is where we'll let you work, and we'll stay hands off. But I just love that shot, You'd see this area that's totally uncared for, boarded up,
Yeah.
grass growing out of the sidewalk.
Except for the one lady who's still there. And then Culver's like, do I have to do everything?
Yeah.
What's powerful about this, too, I mean, I love the shot, is that this is a real place in a real city in the U.S. right now. And that's what I think Simon, I mean, there's a little bit of the documentary here, right? Like,
Yeah.
Simon is really, when he talks in his commentary, like, he really bemoans the fact that parts of this beautiful city, these federal row houses, were just laid to waste and being bulldozed or being destroyed. And I'm sure this is a community that's beyond repair, potentially, in terms of actually just the infrastructure. I mean, it's a document of something that's gone almost, kind of like which started this season, right? the
Yeah.
leveling of those towers. And I think this is a part of the city's history that I think a lot of people think should be preserved, but won't.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of, I've seen shots of Detroit. I don't know if you're familiar with there's a Goobing Detroit Tumblr that gives you the street view shots over a period of several years, and you can see just how things fall apart.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
haven't
Yeah.
seen that. I'd like to see that.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of cool.
Okay. So I know we both have this shot, so let me share it. And this is a communal shot. We're going to be like the New Day co-op here. Okay? How does that fit with you?
Okay.
Is that good? Okay. I don't want to step on your toes because I know you people don't like you when you're angry. I heard you're really you. So here's
Yeah.
Bodie and Stringer, and
Yeah. The Museum of Industry. That's that sign in the background. And I think Bodie's even saying they used to come here when he was in school.
absolutely.
Yeah. And it sort of ties back to the last season, industry's in the museum here. It's not something that's happening anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the story of Baltimore, and it's a really nice kind of it really plays off nicely off your last shot, right? You
Yeah.
got this completely gutted community, which in some ways is a museum of what was. It's a mausoleum almost, right? And then here, the difference is that they built other infrastructure around it, sightseeing, tourist infrastructure. And you see, it's a nice little detail. Off to the guy on the left, you see a school bus in this picture. So it
Right.
reinforces what Bodie's saying, but it also suggests that, yeah, this is a place where people walk around the pier. They go to ESPN Zone. They go to the Barnes and Noble. They take a little like paddle boat out in the harbor, but nothing's being built anymore, right? This is
Yeah.
purely a museum. And this is where, well, the only thing that is being built is loft high-end condos.
Which is what Stringer's doing. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is his new locale, right? Like the thing about season 3 is Stringer is out of the street entirely. And you see that even when you see him. He's got hard hats on, he's got, his glasses on, his three-piece suit. I mean, he's just a different character.
Yeah. He tries to sell McNulty a condo.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a great shot. Um, so there's like a lead into that scene, and I picked up this shot mainly because we've seen that
Oh yeah.
Domino Sugar before. I was trying to figure out what Domino's connection with Baltimore is. I guess they just had a big plant there. Um, but we saw it in the last season a lot. It was like a sign, I guess, near the waterfront. Here, just that chain, like right in front of it, sort of obscuring it.
Yeah.
Like there's a story in there. Yeah.
It's iconic because like you see it from the highway.
Yeah.
Like it is one of the icons, and I mean it does suggest one of the last potential remnants of industry, right? Where they made something. Now,
Yeah.
I think I'd have to do research personally on Domino Sugars to see if they're still located there, if that's still a factory, maybe it is, but if nothing else, it's an indicator of what was and what is, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which gets interestingly at the notion of change, right? Like you do see change in The Wire. So I understand that the game is a certain way and you can't change it, you can't get out of it. We see that with Bunny and we see that with Stringer to some degree. But one of the things you do see is that capital can change. It can change neighborhoods. It can change notions of industry. It can export those jobs, which we saw in season 2. So like the change is defined by a very strict set of rules, and it's the rules of capital. And I think it's interesting that that's what's dictating what can and can't change to some degree, and that's hard to see sometimes. Um, and it's funny that Bunny Colvin can only affect the change he wants to see in Amsterdam by following the rules of Comstat, which in many ways are predefined by institutional logic and notions of capital and control. So there's that notion that even if you want to subvert it, you have to play within the rules. And there's a whole bigger theory about like, given that we're dominated by world capitalism, and I think Emmanuel Wallerstein really talks about this, you can't really live outside of it. Like, you don't live outside a system that dictates how we live. And The Wire, in such an elegant, subtle way, captures that whole thing. Like, it captures that whole theory in a beautiful literary way, without getting into questions of, like, Marx's, third chapter and, Grundrisse, whatever it is, right? It captures that whole element with shots like the one you just showed. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah. Or, the scene at the New Day Co-op where they're engaging in criminal conspiracy according to Robert's Rules of Order,
Exactly. And like you're taking notes, documenting a criminal conspiracy. It's just brilliant. I agree. Now here's another shot, and this is I've ever since season 1. I'm a fan of Avon. Avon, for whatever reason, I'm just compelled by his character. I think the actor plays it pretty well within his powers, and it's just he's the OG gangster in my mind. And you see Avon in this world, and there's a lot of scenes, so you'd almost have to show the entire scene here that happens. But he's just completely uncomfortable. He's been in prison for 26 months. They pick him up in a Ford, and he knows that in some interesting ways. But from here on out, like, they give him his jumpsuit. He moves from his jumpsuit to this kind of suit, like a real suit, like a professional suit, and he just looks uncomfortable. And there's this Bava-esque kind of, I don't know, almost like a room separator, and he's got this high-end luxury suite, and it's just, he's a man who's completely uncomfortable with the world as he comes out. Not unlike Cuddy, but the difference is there hasn't been that much difference in time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's been like 2 years, and he's gone from some seedy bar to some high-end.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and they're just, I don't know if this, maybe this shot doesn't capture it. I just like the Baba-like room separator.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's this moment where you constantly see him separated from Stringer. Like, there is no them together talking. Like, Stringer's got his back to him. He's leaving. He's talking to a whole nother different group of people. Like, the separation of them is in every shot almost.
Yeah. There's several things that go on in this scene. There's one, I captured a sequence of it, but I didn't. We don't have the sound, so we'll leave it out. But some of his crew show up at his party, and they're obviously high. So he hasn't kicked out right away. Like, where's the discipline is what he says.
Yeah.
And that's something that we had been seeing going on.
Absolutely.
Bells have, yeah. But he also has that meeting with Clay Davis and Morris Levy and the other developer guy, Krawcheck, and they're all talking about the straight money that they're going to make in this development thing, which Avon has no interest in. Like, we'll have a meeting on that, set it up, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not his
He was telling him right there, straight and narrow, you don't want to go back. This is a good way to go. Yeah.
Exactly. But he can't help himself almost. Like, it's a really interestingly, it's an interesting moment with Avon, and it further complicates that character, you know what I mean, in some powerful ways. And, he's lost a certain amount of control, right? I mean, Joe Prop is at his coming home. Hey, and he's kind of saying, maybe I should go to the gym. Like, think about their conversation. Joe Prop's coming up to Avon saying, you're looking fit. Maybe I should do some time in the. It's almost like two business guys joking. Like, there's no sense of, like, any of the animosity during the basketball game when you saw those two going at it, and it was a very different notion of their relationship. And here, like you said, high-end bar, kind of jokes. It's almost like we're watching an episode of Entourage.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. It's just a different feel. I love that this show can capture that so beautifully, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Like when at the basketball game, I think, Avon said, "You come to the West Side again, I'll be shooting you."
Right.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So I got another shot of Marlowe here.
Yeah. Let's see it.
And this was just after he had his meeting with Stringer. Stringer's trying to sell him on the co-op, and he's listening, not taking a bite of anything really. Um, and basically walks out, tells Chris that we're getting ready for war.
Yeah.
But I just like the shot because we have him looking up at him. He sort of has that menacing look. He's got that 1,000-yard stare and the scar on his face. You're dealing with a warrior. And that backdrop where everything is just run down.
Yeah. It's a beautiful
Yeah.
shot. It makes me think of another shot. Obviously, it makes me think of Omar because
Yeah.
Omar's got, the scar, a very similar scar, although his goes more along his forehead. But the other thing is, there's one scene in Omar. I mean, there's one scene of Omar in this episode, and they're cleaning guns. And there's basically between Kimmy and um, the other, what's the other character's name? There's Kimmy,
Yeah, I don't know.
Tasha, and then the guy who's with them.
Yeah.
Um, they have some beef about him helping or not. But the interesting thing is, and this goes back to the previous, like 2 episodes ago, when they were kind of framing the Wild Bunch. Omar says, either you learn to live with it, or I'm going to leave you here, which is a direct quote from the Wild Bunch, which William Holden says to like Warren Oates and the rest of them after the ambush. They're all going and they kind of find themselves somewhere off in the desert, and he says to them verbatim, "Either you learn to live with it, or we leave you here." And I just love that he's embedding Wild Bunch quotes throughout the entire season. I mean, it's just, and it's going to ramp up slowly to the Western element of Omar is almost going to become surreal at some point.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how that's not just happening, with no context. It's actually being embedded slowly through these Western references, episode after episode after episode. Even in a throwaway moment when it's just building tension. They're kind of retooling literally their guns after the ambush, and it's as if he went to the Wild Bunch and said, "Hey, what does he say to them at the point when they're falling apart as a group and they have to actually come together?" And Omar's William Holden. He's awesome.
Nice. Yeah. I haven't watched that in a while, so I should probably check it out. Yeah.
It's worth a watch just to see how much he's mapping some of this on top of the Wild Bunch, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, top 5. So it's just so cool to see him do this.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, and then when you talk about Marlowe, you talk about, that whole notion of that Western, the warrior, the scar, and the Western both as a kind of, 1940s, 50s, 60s filmic trope as a real thing, but also as Iraq in the present moment as an insurgent, right? So, like, there's that notion of the West that's now collapsible.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, it just shows the depth and complexity of what's going on in the series here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
All right, Paul.
All right.
It's fun talking about this. As
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. So do we have anyone signed up for the next time?
Not yet. I think they might all be taking a break. Well, let me see. Let me not say that without having looked at it this morning, because last night there wasn't.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong. For the next time, do we have anyone signed up for the video discussions? Maybe, because someone did fill it out yesterday. Or maybe that was me, because I was
Yeah.
no one yet. So it could be just you and me.
All right. Well, either way, we'll go with it. All right.
Yeah. All right, bud.
So that's it for episode 5.
See you on the other side.